She thought she could control everything, the rules, the neighborhood, even nature itself. It all started the morning I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery outside my window. When I stepped out, I couldn't believe my eyes. Cement trucks lined up along my property, and workers were pouring thick concrete straight into my peaceful creek, a creek that had run through my land for generations. Standing at the edge with a smug grin was HOA President Karen. She claimed it was for safety, said the creek was a hazard, and proudly handed me an HOA violation notice declaring the waterway an unauthorized feature. I tried to stop her, but she just laughed and said, "You'll thank me when your property's safer or wetter." What she didn't know was that in trying to destroy what I loved, she was setting herself up for a disaster. Because just days later, a massive rainstorm hit. And thanks to the cement blocking the natural flow of water, her own basement became a fish tank. I'm talking knee-deep water, ruined furniture, and yes, actual fish swimming through her living room. She screamed, begged for help, but it was too late. Nature had struck back, and it hit exactly where it hurt her most. Let me take you back to how this war began. For years, that creek was more than just a stream of water. It was a part of my family's legacy. My grandfather built this cabin by the creek in the 1960s. I spent every summer there, fishing, swimming, and watching deer come to drink from its cool, clear water. After he passed, the land became mine, and I promised to keep it just the way he loved it. Natural, peaceful, untouched. Everything changed when the new HOA formed after a housing development sprang up nearby. Suddenly, people like Karen moved in, people who thought they could control the land they didn't own and dictate what was acceptable. At first, it was small things. She complained that my creek made too much noise when it rained, said it was a drowning hazard for kids who didn't even live on my land, and demanded I fence it off. I refused. That water ran on private property, and no HOA had the right to touch it. Karen didn't take kindly being told no. She started sending me violation letters, bogus fines, and even showed up uninvited with her safety committee, pointing at the creek and shaking their heads like I'd built a nuclear reactor. Still, I held my ground. But Karen wasn't just bossy. She was dangerous. I didn't know it yet, but behind the scenes, she was planning something drastic, something illegal, and something that would set off a chain reaction neither of us could have imagined. The tension kept building like a ticking time bomb. Week after week, I'd find new HOA notices pinned to my gate, each one more ridiculous than the last. Karen accused me of creating a mosquito breeding ground, claimed the creek attracted dangerous wildlife, and even threatened to sue if I didn't drain the water feature immediately. I knew this wasn't about safety. It was about control. Karen wanted to reshape the neighborhood in her image, and my natural land didn't fit her plan. Things came to a head one Saturday morning when I caught her walking along the edge of my property with two contractors. They were measuring the creek, pointing at the water, whispering. I confronted her, and she smirked, saying, "You can either work with the HOA or we'll handle it ourselves." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. Around 4 a.m., I heard engines rumbling in the distance. When I rushed outside, I saw it, cement trucks, headlights blazing, pulling up next to the creek. I yelled, ran toward them, but they were already pouring. Thick, wet concrete gushed down into the water, suffocating the fish, choking the flow, turning my creek into a lifeless gray scar. Karen stood there with folded arms, watching like a queen surveying her victory. I called the police, but she had permits, bogus ones she somehow got approved by a friend in the city council. I was helpless. My land was violated. The creek was dead, and Karen acted like she'd done the neighborhood a favor. I can't explain the rage I felt in that moment, but I swore then and there this wasn't over. What none of us knew, though, was that nature had its own revenge planned, and would come sooner than anyone expected. After the cement dried, the creek was gone, just a hardened, gray channel running through my land where vibrant water once flowed. The fish died off, the birds stopped coming, and the peaceful sound of running water was replaced with silence. I was devastated. That creek wasn't just a piece of land. It was a piece of my family's soul. Neighbors who once enjoyed walking near it now avoided the area. A few even approached me quietly, whispering they were on my side, but didn't want to cross Karen. I wasn't surprised. She had a reputation for bullying anyone who disagreed with her. I contacted environmental agencies, lawyers, and the local news, but Karen's connections ran deep. She claimed the cement was for erosion control and neighborhood safety, and her friend on the city council backed her up. My lawsuit stalled in red tape. She walked around like a hero, smiling for HOA meetings, bragging about solving the creek problem. But then it rained. Not just any rain. This was a torrential downpour, the kind that tests every gutter and drain in the county. My land, despite being altered, handled it fine. But Karen's? The cement had blocked the natural water flow, and the runoff had nowhere to go, except straight into her backyard and under her house. Within hours, her basement was flooding fast. Water burst through the walls, and worse, fish from nearby drainage channels were swept into the flood. Her finished basement, filled with expensive furniture, became a literal fish tank. I watched in stunned silence as she screamed for help, calling emergency services, begging anyone to stop the water. Her perfect carpet floated, her paintings soaked, and the smell of fish filled her $1 million home. The same nature she tried to bury had come back with vengeance, and now it was her house drowning. I didn't gloat. I didn't cheer. But I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: justice. And it was only the beginning of Karen's reckoning. As the rain poured and Karen's basement filled inch by inch with muddy, fish-filled water, the consequences of her arrogance came crashing down literally. The cement she had poured into my creek didn't just block the water on my land. It had redirected the entire neighborhood's natural drainage flow right toward her property. Water pooled in her yard like a swamp, seeped into her foundation, and overwhelmed her home sump pump. The very ecosystem she tried to erase was now reclaiming what it lost, using her house as the battleground. Neighbors gathered outside, some filming in disbelief as Karen waded barefoot through her flooded basement, shrieking at the top of her lungs. Furniture floated, electrical systems shorted out, and the pungent mix of sewage and creek water turned her designer home into a disaster zone. That's when the twist hit. Karen tried to file a claim with her insurance company, only to be denied. Why? Because the damage was labeled an act of negligence, and the cementing of a natural waterway without proper permits avoided her coverage. To make matters worse, city inspectors arrived, tipped off by local news that had picked up the story. Not only did they declare her property unsafe, but they also opened an investigation into forged documents she used to justify the cement job. Turns out her friend at city council wasn't so loyal when the media spotlight turned hot. He flipped, handed over emails, and suddenly Karen was facing hefty fines and potential criminal charges for environmental damage and fraud. Her empire control crumbled before her eyes, all because she couldn't leave a simple creek alone. As I stood at the edge of my property, watching workers now jackhammering up the cement to restore the creek's natural flow, I realized something powerful. Sometimes you don't have to fight people like Karen directly. Sometimes nature, time, and karma do all the heavy lifting for you. In the weeks that followed, the story of HOA Karen's fish tank basement spread like wildfire. Local news ran segments. Environmental groups protested at HOA meetings, and Karen, once the queen of the neighborhood, was now a pariah. The HOA board removed her as president in an emergency vote, and she faced multiple citations from the city for environmental violations and property damage. Her once pristine home sat empty, gutted and waterlogged, a cautionary monument to arrogance and overreach. As for my land, the city sent a restoration team, and with help from the community, we removed every slab of illegal concrete. Slowly, the creek began to flow again. Wildlife returned. I stood on the bank one morning, hearing the familiar sound of water trickling over rocks, and I felt like I'd reclaimed more than just land. I'd reclaimed peace, dignity, and justice of my family's legacy. Several neighbors came to apologize for staying silent. Some offered to plant new trees or help prepare the land. It was a reminder that standing up, even alone, can inspire others to do the same. What started as a battle over control became a story of nature fighting back and winning. Karen moved out quietly one night. Her house sold at a loss, her pride washed away like the cement she poured. I didn't need revenge. I had something better. The truth, the creek, and the knowledge that sometimes the land protects itself and those who honor it. Looking back, I never wanted a war. All I wanted was to protect the land my grandfather cherished, to preserve the simple beauty of that creek for future generations. Karen didn't understand that. She saw nature as something to conquer, control, and cement over, just like she tried to do with people. But in the end, her obsession with power destroyed her own home, not mine. And maybe that's the real lesson here. When you fight nature or the people who respect it, you might win a battle, but you'll never win the war. I didn't have to shout, I didn't have to stoop to her level, and I didn't have to destroy her. I just stood firm, stayed true to what mattered, and let time and karma do the rest. If you think this story was wild, just wait until you hear what happened when the HOA tried to build a fence straight through my private boat dock. Trust me, you won't believe how that ended. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join me for more unbelievable real-life stories where justice isn't just served, it's delivered with a twist.